Well, hello again. I'd like to tell you a story about you never know. I guess that's the moral of this story. I was doing stand up comedy out in California, and I was mostly doing road gigs, traveling from place to place, doing one nighters here and there, a casino now and then, a club now and then, until I found out there was more money for a comedian in casinos, colleges, and corporate gigs than there are in clubs and little one nighters. But at the time, I was doing a lot of one nighters. I did have a gig coming up at a casino up in Washington State. So I was getting ready for it. And a good friend of mine from Oakland, a comedian from Oakland named Ross Turner. In fact, Ross Turner is in a lot of independent films today. You might see him in a lot of independent films. He's doing really well out there in California. Ross Turner called me and he said, "Hey, I heard, do you know who Jimmy Brogan is?" And I said, "Yes, he's one of Jay Leno's best friends, and he was the head writer for The Tonight Show for 9 years for Jay Leno. The first 9 years, Leno took over The Tonight Show." And he said, "Right." He said, Jimmy is thinking about representing comedians and getting them gigs and knows something about show business. And so it might be a good idea for you to send your demo tape to him." I say tape. It was a CD. It was a DVD. It was called Spirit Walker, Indian Giver. It was my first demo DVD, and I'd sell it at my shows and things like that. And it was filmed in Rohnert Park, California, and it was a good enough video for a demo, but it would have never made it commercially. But I did sell it, privately in my shows. So I packaged one up and I sent it to Jimmy Brogan. So I am on my way up to Washington State to do this show in the casino, and I got into an area on the highway 101 that goes up the west coast. And I got into an area where I didn't have cell service. When I came out the other side, all of a sudden my phone went off and I had a voice message. And so I pulled off into a rest stop and I checked the voicemail, and it was Jimmy Brogan. And Brogan had called my cell phone and he said, "Listen, Spirit Walker, I've just watched Indian Giver, and I just have to say I am a big fan of Spirit Walker. Call me when you get a chance." And he left a message, left a number. Well, of course, I was just completely flabbergasted that Jimmy Brogan had called me, and that he was enamored with my comedy. So I called him, and the first thing he said was, "You know that Red Man comedy bit that you do at the end of the show?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You have to turn that into a book. You have to get it illustrated by a professional and turn that into a book." Now, for those of you who don't know, the Red Man comedy bit I do is a takeoff of Jeff Foxworthy's "You Might Be a Redneck," but it's called "You Might Be a Red Man." I do an impression of Jeff Foxworthy if he were an Indian. And I do the "How to Tell If You Have Indian Blood. You Might Be a Red Man If You Have These Different Things." And so I thought, that's a good idea. And he said, "Trust me, if Jeff Foxworthy can make $1 million off of it, you can make $1 million off of it." Okay. He said, "The second thing is I want you to come down and work with me and Jay Leno at the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa Beach." That was another bombshell. Wow. You want me to come down and meet with you and Jay at the Comedy and Magic Club? This has to be done. Now, why did I tell you that story? I told you that story to tell you this. You never know when your next break's going to come. You never know when the next opportunity is going to come. A lot of people say, "You were just in the right place at the right time." Well, I'm here to tell you, that is important. To be in the right place at the right time is important. However, to be ready to be in the right place at the right time is more important. I've seen a lot of comedians burn out because they took a jump too soon. They had 10 minutes of good, solid material. They were a good opening act. But when they got that feature act, that 30-minute middle set, they weren't ready. But they jumped at it because they needed that exposure. And they tried to stretch that 10 or 15 minute set that they really had that was tight and good and stretch it into 30 and completely ruin the reputation because they could not sustain for 30 minutes. They weren't ready to be in the right place at the right time. Be ready. Work on your stuff. And that goes for any profession. Be ready to be in the right place at the right time. Hey, I've enjoyed this little chat. And the next time, I'll tell you more about when I met Jay Leno at the Comedy and Magic Club because it was hilarious. Thanks for the chat. We'll talk to you later.